Okay. Well, everyone, thank you for tuning in to Xavier's Journey. I'm here with Dr. Smalls, Valerie Smalls, Dion Smith, and Dr. Nancy Watson, and Mr. John Bryce. And I am Xavier, where everyone's listening to us talk today about mental illnesses and mental disorders. So the questions I have. Okay, so how does the pandemic affect mental illness? Anyone can Dion.
Sure, I'll start. Mental health absolutely affected. I'm sorry, the pandemic absolutely affected, had a very big impact on how we navigated through life. There was an increase in substance use. I forgot the statistics, but many adults chose to cope with the effects of the pandemic by having an increase of alcohol. Um, Depression went up. The statistics, if you go to the CDC website, you're going to see that depression numbers had gone up, as well as anxiety. There was some, increase in suicide, but mainly substance use, depression, and anxiety. And that was because of the isolation. Sometimes people really don't like change. So just the fact that the world was in a change position
Mm-hmm.
that we had never experienced before. That change alone, caused anxiety. And then the depression came in with the isolation. We weren't able to go visit our loved ones and, have the same fellowship that keeps us overall healthy. Therefore, we kind of lean towards some of those negative coping skills. And so depression was very high, as well as anxiety. And like I said, substance use.
I think that repetition sort of create a hiding place for fault. And I think what the pandemic did is open it up to showing us exactly, who we are in our own spaces. Because think about it, the drive to work and home is spare time for yourself. You don't have to share that with anybody. But when you're home with your spouse, your kids, even yourself, now you have to share that space with what you normally wouldn't see on a daily basis. But now you have to adjust yourself to deal with it. It's like playing fair in the sandbox when you were kids. When you were in the sandbox by yourself, it was fine. Everything was great. And then all of a sudden, somebody else bring their toys over in the sandbox with you. That's when it starts, because now you're trying to be protective of your own. You're possessive of your own space. You want your own environments. You find two household families who are home sharing their own space, but in different areas. So one may be in the bedroom doing their work from home, and the other one may be in the business room where they're doing their work from home. So when you're in that same space, and imagine this, you're going to lunch every day with your spouse, every day, not your friends, your coworkers, or anything else. And where's your personal private time? Because after you finish work, you walk into the next room, which is probably your bedroom or your living room, and you're back to your family again. So if nothing else, I think it exposed us.
Okay.
John and Dion, I want to, as you were speaking, I agree 100% with you. How I usually say, whatever you do one way, you do it the same way across the board. So what were we doing in our lives prior to the pandemic? Whatever we were doing is just now magnified. So if we were not spending time with family, with our spouses, with our children, and now we are, it's just magnified. And now we have the opportunity to see who we really are and what we really are. In addition to that, I think that something came to me intrapersonal conflict, the conflict that we have within ourselves that a lot of times we were not dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I don't know, Dion and John, maybe the that's internal, the conflict that we was having that we never even dealt with, but because of the pandemic, it became so crystal clear because like you said, John, we had no place to really hide. We were exposed. Yes, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
That's what I was actually going to add about relationships. There was an increase in both places when it came to marriages. Some marriages really bonded, had the best sex they've ever had, and really talked and spent time together, because that was missing. And then some marriages did not survive the pandemic just because of exactly what you're talking about. When we go to work or we go to church and do all of our social things, you don't deal with the real issues. But the pandemic really unmasked the real issues. If the issues were communication, or like I said, lack of intimacy, whatever that intimacy looked like, the pandemic highlighted it. And then, like Dr. Valerie said, you had nowhere to go. You go sit outside, but you got to come back in. So you had nowhere to go. And therefore, I feel like, some of us hibernated, like you took a moment in the bathroom, took a moment in the closet, and you had to sit with feelings that you normally, you were allowed to mask when you went to work. You could become a different person. You could be happier at work, but really, I feel like the covers were pulled off. And so here we had to deal with our true self.
Right.
And
I would like,
I'm sorry.
I would like to chime in to talk about the experiences that I've seen around an increased fear in a lot of people. And when you talk about mental illness, this fear magnified other things. So in terms of you coping with stress and coping with fear led to anxiety, depression in the home, around you, in the community, speaking from the perspective of even within the church. It was the thought of what is going to happen next. What else is going to happen? Because if you can remember during the pandemic, information was not out there. It is now. The knowledge has increased within that time. But during that time, it was stated, okay, many people around me are leaving or dying or getting sick. So the anxiety and the stress and the fear of the unknown. I heard somebody say this in the community, am I next? Am I the next one to die? And it produced so much anxiety. Whereas you have people that were not on psychotropic medications are now on them, unable to cope and deal with what is going on around you. Just wanted to share that point in terms of fear.
Good.
Yeah,
absolutely.
in terms of fear and stress.
Well, and to add to that too, if I can, think about this: your mental illness doesn't just affect two-parent households; doesn't affect just any separate individual. It's a universal concept. This happened in the midst of us dealing with life as it was anyway. Period. So now I'm in the room with an individual who doesn't have the answer, just like I don't have the answer. But also look at this from the other part. Individuals who are suffering with mental illness, they may have their own space. So now every place they go, there we are. So if we were at work and an individual suffering with mental illness who was homebound, now do their 9 to 10 o'clock market trip. Well, guess what? We're there now. So their space is being equally shared with us, and it's probably exacerbating their conditions. Even though, and think about how our faces look. We have no answer to this. So the individuals who would normally be your normalcy is now an irritant as well as an exacerbator for your issues too as well. So I think that it really opened up. And another way, it actually unified us too, because it made us understand and made us aware of everybody's space too as well.
I like that, John. It did bring a moment of unifying us, bringing us together. Whereas I think you mentioned, Dr. Dion, that families that weren't used to doing certain things, their relationships increased. Even within our children, mothers and fathers that have not spent so much time with their children was forced, literally, because remember, the educational system was online.
Yeah.
It was online. It was through Zoom classes. So the interaction with the families, relationship built, as well as parents were frustrated because now I got to be on with my son or daughter for 8 hours, and and they have to be teachers.
Yes.
Which is different.
And then also, it also for me, my family's in Jersey. I'm living by myself in the Bronx, Harlem, and so it took me to a place where I had to stay before the throne of grace a lot. It reminded me Moses' days with Pharaoh and let go my people. So it reminded me of when God sent down the plague. That's what it sounded like to me, and it was just time for me to just stay before the Lord, pray, get stay within myself, get to know myself. Because for those 3 months when they shut down New York City, we couldn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Xavier, if I can add to that too, if we can put ourselves in the mindsets of the caretakers, so the caretakers, whether being a caretaker for an elder individual who's
Mhm.
dealing with mental illness or a young individual, their only break is usually when that person goes to adult daycare, if that individual goes to daycare or to school. So
Right,
imagine now they have absolutely no outlet.
right,
That is it. What they're dealing with now is 100% the situation. They're dealing with all the emotions. They're dealing with all the energy, and there is no break for this. What happens to them? Because now their mental health is at stake while dealing with trying to handle individuals with mental illness.
right.
Yeah, it was a lot, and we should definitely highlight grief. Um,
Mm.
Grief was all around. Death was all around. And like Dr. Nancy said, fear. Grief and fear, and again, the what's next mentality. But our children didn't understand. My mom, pop, different ones, auntie such and such. And I want to talk about our elders experience the loss, the elders that came through the pandemic. You have to understand, most of them lost like 5 to 7 people. So even now that we're on the other side of it, for the most part, they have lost our senior citizens have lost quite a few friends. Lost quite a few friends as a result. So, some of this is still
Wow.
lingering. I know that there's been an increase in people who are on psychotropic meds, now, since we're kind of on the other side of it.
Dion, it's interesting that you said about grief. Just personally for myself, after the 25th death, I stopped counting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I stopped counting.
Yeah.
And I didn't have time to grieve.
Right. You really do. Mm-hmm.
I didn't have time to grieve because I had to work. I had to keep on going. And
Yeah.
almost I became numb.
Right.
I just became numb because it was so much death around me and with my family, my friends.
Right.
So just talking about grief, it was very interesting too.
So,
Yes.
Yeah.
so do you think that Dr. Nancy and Dion and John, do you think that we talking about grief, because now we are definitely moving into mental health, because how are we dealing? We're not really post-pandemic, but you just said something that was very key, Dr. Watson. You really didn't have opportunity to grieve.
Because
Okay, so is that showing up? I don't know, Dion, John, Dr. Watson, is it showing up in other areas? Has it started to play itself out in other areas that we are consciously aware of and probably not unconsciously aware of? Because that's something that that's critical. And we spoke in the first meeting, we spoke about trauma. Okay,
Right.
I'm not going to bring that in on this platform, but not dealing with that grief, is it showing up in other areas? And I want to know if we should be on guard for that.
Well,
And see, oh,
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry.
no, really quickly, that's why I believe that there was an increase in substance use. Anytime you have a traumatic event or an unexpected event, there has to be a response. We're going to respond. Either we're going to respond outwardly, physically, emotionally. There will be a response to that. And then we go into our coping skills. How are we coping? Are we coping? Dr. Watson said she kind of went, the way she was able to navigate through it, she had to kind of numb her emotions to hearing about death so that she can work, provide for her family, take care of the things that she needed to take care of. Other people, coped with grief with increasing the alcohol, increasing substance use, marijuana, different things, even,
Eating.
unprotected or whatever sex. I mean, all of those things, although we shouldn't have been dipping and doing with strangers, people still did it because they were trying to cope with what they were experiencing. So I definitely believe that some people did go to the negative areas. And like Xavier said, he decided to go back to his roots. He decided to go back to prayer. I heard that too. Some people said, I haven't prayed this much in a long time. So it was all about which direction they felt like they needed to take, and some did both.
Well, and I think that when I hear people say, "I want to get pandemic over, and I want to get to the point where I want to go back to the way things were," it'll never be back to the way it was.
Right.
Where we are now is the new experience of where we're going to have to adjust to and be a part of. And although those things that happened during the pandemic, it was still underneath us regardless. The sexual outlets, the marijuana, the drinking, that was still a part of us anyway. Think about it. There were still bill collectors calling people's homes right before the pandemic.
Yes, they were.
And they still called during the pandemic, whether they were dead or alive. It didn't matter. So whatever you deal with, I have this saying in the nursing homes. As a nursing home administrator, I always say this. Our goal is to get individuals back to normalcy, whether that is a good life or not. It doesn't matter. So now that we understand or have a glimpse into the world of mental health, are we going to go back to, we're going to go forward to a thinking that, okay, that was only a temporary measure for me. I don't have to live with it for the rest of my life, nor do I need to address it anymore. And then go back to that same old way it was before, where it was sort of taboo and hidden if you had, or even afraid to talk to about having mental health. You can't have like physical health without dealing with the mind. And if you don't help the mind, then it's gonna put us back into these little closet spaces again, and our own little silos, and not being able to unify ourselves like we did during this pandemic, and being able to go to a whole new level where it's not an illness, not a hidden illness anymore. It's a collaborative unity of individuals trying to get through it and help people get through it.
Okay. So the next question I wanted to ask, I think this is a good one. Can people get over mental illness or mental disorders with or without medication? These are questions that people gave me, and I'm just throwing it at the panel to see. Is it true?
I say yes.
I would say unsure, because not being associated, not having a mental illness aspect, being diagnosed with a mental illness, I can't say that it can, but I would say this: anything is possible. And with prayer, I know for a fact anything is possible. There's nothing impossible. But I think it all starts with, no matter what you do in life, is that you really have to. Now, what sense of normalcy are they really going to if they've been in mental illness all their life? That is their sense of normalcy. So now, what are they going to go to?
Right. Right.
I would like to say, I believe you can. Just answer me. Yes, with and without. I want to say, with, and I know Dr. D, this is her specialty. So I know with you taking medication, it will keep your body's balance, right? But without, personally, through testimonials, I've seen it. Okay. So in terms of finding coping skills, working on coping skills, what can I do during this time? Again, and how severe is the mental illness is another factor. So when you're talking about, because some people, go into mental illness through trauma, something that have happened. It could be grief, and they go in an instant depression. I like to call it situational. So they go into instant depression. There's a period of time through counseling, ongoing counseling, therapeutic measures that the counselor will share, dealing with coping skills of your environment. Without taking medications, there is a great possibility that depression will release. You will feel a little bit better in time. Time is a major factor. Then there are those who are schizophrenia. Okay. that have a longer, I think John outlined it so well, that have a history of bipolar, that may require a different technique, so it depends on where the person is, if I may say that. It depends on where. One thing in social where we learn, start with the person is, start where they are. So it depends on where the person is, will determine medication or not.
Well, Nancy, can I throw something? I mean, Dr. Watson, can I throw something in there?
Yes,
Do you
sir.
think, or anyone for the panel, let me say it this way. Do you think that an individual who suffer from a mild source of mental illness that is used to attention from outside sources, does that become the source of addiction that they don't want to get rid of so that they can stay in the condition that they're in? Because the empathy, the socialization, the pampering, all the different aspects that go along with it are still there. Because if they go to a sense of normalcy that is expected for those surrounding individuals, what happens to them?
Well, there's exceptions on all sides. I mean, yes, I definitely agree, Mr. Bryce, that absolutely there are people who love the attention. They love having a therapist. They love being a part of a community. And that would be the mental health community. Absolutely. To me, I look at that as an exception, just like there's on the opposite side. There are severely mentally ill people who refuse medicine, refuse all kind of treatment that has its own, maladaptive behavioral systems, like has its own problems with that. So yes, to me, I see both of those extremes. I mean, we probably know people who love the attention of being, let me talk to you and take you by it. But I never, as a clinician, I never want to get to the point where I start to burn out and see people through that lens, because it becomes hard to see when someone is authentic and then when someone is attention seeking, and understand that some attention seeking behaviors are a part of the diagnosis of what they have. We had a diagnosis of histrionic personality disorder, and that personality disorder absolutely included attention seeking. That would include sexy clothes and always needing constant attention, narcissism. All of that includes attention seeking. So with that, I want to keep my lens pure so that I can see when someone authentically needs that help and when they don't. I definitely want to go back to what Dr. Watson is saying, or to answer your question, Xavier, yes, both. Medication, I am not one of the ones that says don't take medicine, and I'm not the person I'm not the kind of clinician that pushes it.
Okay.
When you are severe, I love what Dr. Watson says. There is a spectrum. There is a scale for everything: moderate, mild, severe, moderate, severe. And where you are on that spectrum may, determine medication is needed. The way I like to give what I like to call the walking wounded, a little hand holding when it comes to medicine, I'll say, talk with your doctor, ask them to start you out with something mild. See if this works for you. Because mind you, we've all heard depression medication commercials where they're saying, and the side effect is suicidal ideations. And I'm looking like, now,
It's true.
Right. So I know a lot of people are afraid. And then a lot of people are using the homeopathic way. They're doing yoga or the all natural teas. And sometimes marijuana plays a part. Sometimes people want to medicate naturally. And I'm not opposed to that. If your mental health issues impair you in two major functions of your life, home and work, home and school, work and community, you may want to get evaluated to see where you are on that severity spectrum to see if medication is needed.
Wow. So in essence, it's really is no one size fit all. It's just where everyone is at. Okay.
Definitely.
Right.
Wow.
Sounds good.
Can I before you let me add to this, because I love this. This is bringing out that meat that we need to actually to address.
Yeah.
Do you think? Let me say this. I think that when we talk about medication and we talk about treatment, we speak from a, if I would say from 0 being the worst, 10 being the best, we speak from maybe a 8, 9, 10 scale of individuals who are practicing. But what about those individuals who are practicing but are not really practicing? Meaning that I'm going to prescribe you based off, you came in, you seemed appropriate, and I'm just going to prescribe and not deal with the underlying issue first
That happens all the
before
time.
prescribing, because it does. And now you have two things wrong. You have an underlying issue that was never addressed, and you're pre-medicated or medicated, and you're probably addicted to that medication in which you're using. So how do you deal from that, from a clinician standpoint? How do you get underneath that onion and peel it back until you can find the source of it and then properly medicate or use therapy as a source of actual recovery?
May I say this? My thought, there's a difference between psychiatry and psychology. And there's a difference between treating the symptom and, like you mentioned, the root cause. If you go to the hospital and you say, well, I can't sleep because I feel anxious, they're going to give you medication, okay, to help you sleep. That's dealing with that symptom, right? But what causes that symptom is what you need to get to. Okay, so that's where you get, so that's a psychiatry perspective. You need a psychologist, a clinician, a therapist, someone that can come in and say, okay, you're taking this, but why? What happened? Okay, take me back. When did the symptom occur? What were you doing? Listen, when I cross bridges, I'm telling you, my armpits sweat. I'm telling
Anxiety.
you, my heart pumps everything. I'm being honest. Listen, when just in that Bay Bridge, listen here. See, so I immediately go into anxiety.
Yeah.
Wow. We
And
all
that's
do.
real.
No, it's real.
I'll be
But
fine.
you don't need medication for
Tooting that
that.
horn.
It's a short ride with a long medication.
Because I go from 80 to 20 and I'm behind the wheel. Literally. Now, I could go to the hospital, right? And they will say, okay, let me give you some Valium. Let me give you something to make you relax. And they ask, but a therapist will say, Nancy, listen to this, y'all. I wasn't always like that. So what caused that? What happened in your body?
Right.
Now I can say my children, because they bring a chemical imbalance, but nevertheless, somebody may say something else, right? So it's being able to identify what is the root cause, what is the cause that allows you to your body to respond in these ways. I just go ahead and just
no. See, we have to be careful with that, Dr. Watson, because this is where Dion and John went on that tangent into history. So we can't, I because we started dealing with the core. See, so I can't say what I want to say because I'm afraid that they might go back there again in this episode.
Right.
So I'm not going to, but Dr. Nancy, if you were on the other meeting we had, is that core. Are we dealing with issue with what's transpiring? So I'm not going to get into it. I'm gonna leave it right there because I know we have to stay focused. So go ahead.
I don't think we'll take offense to that, right?
No. And I'm gonna say, when it comes to what you said, John, there are two sides there. You're going to have prescribers who immediately will prescribe medication. Like Dr. Watson said, you go to ER, you're going to get medication, right? But what we do in Louisiana, what I've observed in Louisiana, is if you go to your primary care and say, is depression and I'm this and I'm that, they will prescribe something to you, but then they're going to say, before I refill this prescription, you have to get connected to a therapist or an agency that will then do the therapy and things like that. There are people like Dr. Watson. For the most part, every day she's fine. When she goes over bridges, she has an anxiety attack. If I was her therapist, I would give her skills that she would use prior to going on the bridge, while on the bridge, after the bridge, and she's back to fine. I wouldn't necessarily give her medicine for it. But there's always going to forever be extremes because psychiatrists get paid to write those prescriptions. So they're going to write those prescriptions. But a good psychiatrist is also going to write the prescription to relieve the acute symptoms, but then also refer you to a therapist.
And I think the caregivers.
Right. No, go ahead, John. No, I just wanted to say what it came to me was this example that you're all using is because I had a student. I teach a public speaking course, and every time he would stand up and give a speech, the very first time that he gave a speech, I thought that it was something that I did. It looked, John and everyone, as if someone came and threw a bucket of water on him.
It's real.
He was standing there, and honest to God, if the three of you or you, the three of you, the four of you, or anyone else would have shared this with me, I would not have believed them. He literally was standing there, and the way he just started the sweat, I started to panic because I said, oh my God, is he having some type of attack? And he wasn't. By the time he finished, he was soaking wet. And, John, so what I had to do, 15-week course, I had to give him skills, and I had to work with him for every presentation. No medication, but there were things that we did. So back to what Dr. Nancy was saying and what Dion is saying, what skills are we going to put in place other than medication? But John, what were you going to add to that?
I was going to add something small to it too. I think that we have to do our homework on both sides. An individual who is suffering with mental illness or the caretaker that's associated with that individual, if you're going to go prescribe medication, let's do this. Let's get labs done first on your blood to find out where you are, your baseline. Then we take this medication and we do periodic labs to make sure to see how it adjusts in your body, because it's a chemical balance that happens in your body too when you're taking certain medication, and you want to know what the differences are between one and the other. And it's and talk about this young man. It's funny. My first presentation I've ever had to do, I fell in love with public speaking. It was like it was my calling. So I understand the difference between having the passion for it as well as being afraid, because 5 minutes before I got on stage, I was like, everything in the world I thought could happen. And then something came over me. Fear. False evidence appearing real. And I realized that everybody in the audience need to hear what I was telling them instead of the opposite way around. So the minute I figured it out, it was like, okay, I can mess up and they'll never know.
Right.
Never know.
That is true.
You wrote the speech.
That's
so,
right.
so then since we're on this topic,
That's so true.
hold on. Since we're on this topic, then I guess y'all already answered. The next question was, what is the difference? What is the difference between mental illness and mental disorder? I guess y'all tapped onto that already.
Oftentimes it's interchangeable, the word. When you sent us that question, and I had to look it up myself. I'd never act like I know everything because I don't. And oftentimes, the words are closely associated with the signs and the symptoms and things like that, and they're often used interchangeably. But I have to go back to this medication. I have to go back to that one last time, because John said that we should get labs, and I agree with that. But there are some instances where medication is needed immediately prior to labs. But again, we're going to those extreme situations. If you have somebody who is suicidal, hearing voices, whatever it is, you may not have time for it. So you do have to, provide that. But I love that. I love the idea of getting medication. And many people do not know this, but I believe, don't quote me, I think it was here in Louisiana, for Medicaid clients, they are allowed a genetic test. There not only is like, where's your heart rate and your blood and your high blood pressure, how the body titrates, how the body takes in the medicine also could be based on your genetic makeup. There are some medications that will not work with certain people, and many people don't know that. So they'll tell you as the clinician, oh, I got medicine, it doesn't work. Whereas if they knew that they could get free, it's one that is paid for and it's free, they could get a genetic test so that the doctors will know this is the kind of medication that will work for their genetic makeup. Many people don't even know
That's
that.
good.
Yeah. And it's almost equivalent to dieting. Dieting is the same concept. Most people think that there's a universal concept for dieting. It's not. Every single person is made individually. So therefore, what works for one will not work for the other. So you're right. When it comes to situations like this, and when you think about it, even though that there's a caveat inside the health plan to do this, most people won't take advantage of it because here's the problem. In our community, and I'll say only for my community because I lived in my community since I was born. So in our community, it is a taboo to talk about mental health. It's a taboo to talk about seeing a psychiatrist. It's a taboo to say that you have something that you're trying to work through because everybody is pretending to be as strong as they are and in the weakest point of their life.
That's true.
So.
True. I agree. I'm not going to make too many comments on that, John, because that's a whole nother tangent and that's a whole something else. So I don't have too many comments. But I will say that after teaching for the last 2 years in the pandemic, I'm so glad that I'm sharing this platform with you experts because it's given me some tools and some skills and the information to know how to communicate with my students and give them recommendations and where to move them or send them without, giving any diagnosis, but to just share this information. And I think that it's great that, like John said, it's a taboo to talk about these things in Black and brown communities. And it seems like we're the ones that's hurting the most. And
Yeah,
I'm
100%.
Right, pre-pandemic. I'm talking about pre-pandemic, during the pandemic, and post-pandemic. Our communities are the ones that are being affected or have been affected the most. And we really, like Dion has said, and Dr. Watson and John, like you're saying, we really need some tools and we really need some skills to give not just the middle age and the elderly, but to give the young people. I mean, I'm talking about between the ages of 13 and 24. They need some skills and coping mechanisms. And whatever we can share right now on this platform, I think it would be great.
Well, and to add to that, so we talked about this 40 acres and a mule for years. When I was a kid, I talked to my mom about it, and yeah, I understand the existence of it, the promise that was made. So here's the new 40 acres and a mule again. How about instead of give us one person in our family who can actually be fully paid, tuition paid for any university that they want to go to. That's one. Two, because of the atrocities of our past. Because of we talked about this a little bit on a previous segment, but I'm not going to go too down. We're not going to go too deep in this one. But because of the atrocities of our past, you should make it not only available, but propaganda. Here's the key to propaganda. Make it okay for us to utilize therapeutic service to actually get past this process of torture. Because you remind me every single year for 28 days that slavery exists. Every single year. Even for those children who are growing up now, you're taught that there was an atrocity that happened to you every single year for 28 days out of that year. Now, there is no other culture who's went through the atrocities we went through that is consistently reminded of the same problems without having therapeutic services there to actually cope them through it. And that is the biggest problem because we're still living the same old cycle of abuse and trying to cope with it. So when you talk about mental illness, I think that any one of us look like us got to have mental illness because of the past. And people say, well, it wasn't you that experienced it. My DNA is a part of my family's legacy.
Absolutely.
So it's no way.
Oh my God, John, I am really, because this is going to go live. I want to say something, but
say it.
You gotta say it.
We might get into, but I have to say it.
Say it, Dr. Val. Come on, say it.
Okay, based on what you just said, John. Now, and if Dr. Watson, Dion, Xavier, John, if y'all need to correct me. Based on what you just said, let me just repeat because I want to make sure I heard what you said. You said that we are reminded every year, at least for 28 days, of the tragedies that we went through as a people. Okay, that's what you said. So yes. based on that, if we learn that 28 days out of the year, I am not too familiar with CRT, critical race theory. I'm not too familiar with it, but I have some understanding of what might be taking place. So I need to know, John, if that is taught in the school system for more than 28 days, is it a possibility that that is adding to the stress of our people if we are not given the tools and mechanisms on how to relieve ourselves and how to deal with it?
I think that you hit it 100% on the head. Because I think the problem is this. Think about this. When they teach us habit forming things, there is a measurement of time in which it takes for that habit to form. But when that habit forms, it's a creative process in us. Now, for an individual to be subject to that every single time, and here's the case, every single individual they speak about, for the lifespan of not being associated with equality, for the lifespan of fighting for the decencies to have basic rights, and the atrocities of murder for most of these individuals who we speak highly of every single year is a reminder of it. It's like going through the Holocaust over and over again, saying that the simple atrocities that they, and that, yes, some of the experiments that they took from that, I'm not concerned with the experiments they took from the Holocaust in this way. It still took life. You should not take life to advance life. I'm sorry. I draw the line. I don't care if you of what race you are, and that's still with us too. So you have to respect that we have gone through something that we are constantly reminded of every single year, and it's like Groundhog's Day. There is no outlet for this at all.
Okay, so then, Dion and Dr. Watson, what are we supposed to be doing? Because to me, this is a tragedy right here, and this brings fear. This brings anxiety.
It does.
I'm just saying. So then, what are we supposed to do if I am going into a classroom as a youngster between the ages of I don't know, let's say 12 to 17, and this is what I am going to be learning every day? What am I?
Go further back. Go from 0 to 5.
Okay,
0 to 5 when the makeup of the mind starts.
I didn't want to go there, but okay, 0 to 5. Now go, Dion.
So the responsibility, if the schools are going to tell us we were slaves, if the schools are going to tell us, if you look on the television and you see the disparity, how African Americans are treated compared to our white counterparts in every area when it comes to being arrested and drugs and all in violence, all of those things. We have to go back to our core. It is up, and I want to make sure we bring this back to mental health. It is the parents. If you have healthy parents, you will make healthy communities. That is one of my things. Healthy people create healthier communities. If we are educating our youth about how to navigate, how to cope through it, if we are doing our best not to re-traumatize our children, if we are doing our best to educate, but mind you, every household, again, I'm going back to extremes. Every household is not set up with a healthy, well-educated parent about all of these things. So then it falls on the community, the social workers, the teachers even, to not only provide the education about our history, but I love what you said, Dr. Valerie, to provide coping skills on how to navigate in this world and how to see ourselves bigger than I'm a slave. I celebrate our millennials. Now I'm gonna say something and we might argue. I'm fine with that. I can hold my own.
We can argue to disagree.
I celebrate our millennials, our Black and brown millennials. And I know you guys are wondering why, because that group, the millennials and those under them, they don't have the same stigma that we have when it comes to getting treatment. Right. I can name millennials in my family, and they actually say, well, girl, my therapist said, or girl, my therapist said. Therapy is now becoming something that they have on their team. I also want to highlight that Black women Although, yes, we have been indoctrinated that we are slaves, Black women are we are single-handedly rising to the top when it comes to entrepreneurship.
Yes.
We start businesses and thrive in businesses at a faster rate than our white counterparts. So just like we're having this conversation about, we've been indoctrinated about we're slaves, we have always been a people in a race that triumphs. We have always been a people in a race that conquers through. And I feel like we could talk about our history, and we can then also talk about our achievements, where we have come from. And that, to me, starts at home. But everybody doesn't have that at home.
Knock, knock.
Go ahead.
So,
It does. I want to chime in.
We got to talk about mental health
I'm gonna let you
now.
chime in, but I'm gonna bring it. I want to bring it closer. You're so right, 100% right. But I am an endangered species.
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
I'm so much of an endangered species that I have to be in the animal kingdom a chameleon.
Facts.
Because if I let my ferocious nature be my presence, I become a target.
Facts.
But if I'm able to adapt, then I can live long. Right. But at what cost to me? As an African-American male, a simple police stop can catastrophically end the generation of my family.
Absolutely.
Yes.
The situation that happened in Buffalo, where a young underneath millennium, what is that, XY, went into a place and thought it carefully or thought it careless enough to end lives of individuals he's never met.
Right.
An individual who went to a church and worshiped with them. Again, same age limit. But you're taught this. You're taught this evil atrocity for what? For us. And we're victimized over and over again. And they all live. Not that I'm wishing death on anybody. But how is it that these individuals, you telling me if that's not mental illness, not just for the individuals who suffered with it, the individuals who surrounded themselves around it, but us as watching this, that I know for a fact, it's like crossing your fingers and saying, are they going to be found guilty? Or am I going to have to live with this again to know that my life really don't matter in public when you show the atrocity and this person is getting 10, 15 years for mass murder? Where if I put a hood on and a pack of Skittles, I lose my life.
And that's mental, and that's trauma and fear.
That is trauma.
And that falls under, is it mental disorders or mental illness? I think one leads to the other.
Right.
Yeah. Because I got to teach my son that. I teach my kids that. I can teach my boys that.
We are vicariously traumatized, period. We are traumatized. There is vicarious traumatization. I have not been stopped by the police where I couldn't bat my eyelashes and get out of the ticket. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I could bat my little eyelashes, smile a little. Oh, I didn't know, child.
It works.
Okay,
it works.
Okay, but what I'm going to teach my son is going to be totally different, right?
Yes.
We are vicariously traumatized. I can barely watch the news because I'm vicariously traumatized. It brings anxiety. It brings depression. It brings a sadness that I'm raising at this old age that I am, a Black male in this environment. So, bringing it back to mental illness, we are traumatized. And so Dr. Valerie, again, asked an amazing question. What do we do with this? We educate. We teach our boys, unfortunately, Mr. Bryce, Dr. Bryce, I'm going to call you. I would love for my son to be his authentic self. I would love for him to do a traffic stop and be able to ask the same questions his white counterparts can, but we know that he can. So being a chameleon will save his life. By God's name, I want his life spared. I'm going to teach him the skills. And so it all comes back to education. When you feel that depression, and I'm talking to our studio audience that we're going to have, when you feel that vicarious traumatization where you feel anxiety, when you hear about things that mass shootings, going into churches are our safe haven.
Yes.
How do we deal with that anxiety? And that's where we need to talk about the coping skills for those things. Like Dr. Ness said early on in the conversation, is it going to happen to me also? we have to then teach the skills on how to live through these kind of things, because as the old grandmom says, it is what it is and it ain't what it ain't. This
And, and,
is our
That's right.
environment.
and add to that,
Mhm.
we need to stop this defunding police thing. Is
Man
I
of
don't
God,
even know where the
this
common sense come from to even
this is
put
not
this out there. You shouldn't defund it. We should oversaturate it with us.
Yes,
So,
yes,
because the problem is not, see what they
us.
did, not they, not them, not they. The bad apples that wear the blue, the black and blue, are the ones that are getting these stories, not the good officers that are helping people, that are not locking people up, that are teaching individuals. So now instead of us going to be a police officer when we grow up, because when I grew up, there was an officer friendly program and
Yeah,
everybody loved the police. And
yes,
again,
we did.
so why
And
not
they had,
just
and they
why
had,
not go
and they
be
had
the problem
passed.
solver instead of being a part of the problem? So
Right, and
be a police officer for your community. So
right,
just
they,
so you will
but,
understand
oh,
it.
sorry.
but they've been traumatized. They've been
They have been.
traumatized.
Listen, I have a 5-year-old, and she says to me anytime, I mean, she can spot a police far. We're in the car, and she said, "Oh my God, there's a police!" And I looked at her reaction, and she said, and it's like she's almost about to cry. It's like she's stuck. And like you said, it's traumatizing, and it's because from what she hear, from what
Right,
she's seen. She's 5 years old. She's in kindergarten, but she has seen it. People talk, kids talk. She see her older siblings talk. You know, and it is traumatic. But I want to go back just a little bit, just a little bit, because we are gonna have people that's gonna listen, and they're going to wonder how can we get out of this, because it's real. It's real. I have 3 African sons, all right, who's in their 20s, and I'm constantly reminding them, you are black. And that's going to sound really weird, but it's the truth. And we have a discussion on how to carry out yourself in the community. There's this book by Dr. Joy DeGruy, and she was talking about the post-traumatic black syndrome,
Mhm.
and she talked about the years of studies, qualitative and quantitative studies, in which she talked about um, this in regard to residual impacts of generation from generation. And then she shares to say that, listen, we as a family, as a community, need to talk to our loved ones,
Facts.
even in religious organizations. I, being a pastor of a church, talk about it, have an open dialogue, because it's real. It's real. You will be stopped by the police. So what do you do? Will you manifest yourself in a character of fear? Will you have anxiety immediately? Will you freeze up, or will you react based upon what your other peers have said or what you heard on the news? Right? Because it's real. John made it so clear, there are good cops and there are not so good cops. So there's a combination. Who knows if you come in contact with that police officer that has some alternative motives? You do not know. So I believe anyone that's listening, that's coming in, having an open dialogue, talk to your children, talk to those around you, even in the community, in a setting, going out to dinner, having a discussion. The more we are become more aware and educate our communities, educate our families, let them know what is going on in the world today. Okay. And not and to how do you react? Talk about ways of how to react, ways of what you to do. What are you supposed to do?
I,
You know,
and to build a foundation, when we're talking to our loved ones, let's talk about, okay, let's talk about how they feel about what they've seen also. Getting to that, what does this do in your body? what does it do? Like, your 5-year-old, it does something to her psychologically and to her body when she sees a police officer. It's a trigger. So talking to the young people and to everyone about what does this make you feel? How does it make you feel? I feel like is important in the classroom as well as in the home.
So why don't the NAACP, and I'm calling out my NAACP on this one, where's the support in the ads that support our young people to be themselves? Because think about it. Our kids technically have to be a certain way in order to be stopped and let go. If that don't create mental illness, I don't know what. You can't be your own individual because you're afraid of what the consequences are for that. I.e., if my son was to, and I'm afraid for my son's life, both of my kids. Both my kids have BMWs. Both of them, I think they dress very trendy. They're articulate, but they fit the mark of a person who is undesirable to the individuals outside of this. I give you a small case. There was an individual accident that occurred on the road right in front of my son's school. My son happens to go to a very prominent private school. The young lady, who happens to be a white woman driving, called the police and drove them over to the school lot where my son was practicing football. She said that a gentleman in a white Jeep Cherokee hit her car. She said she looked through the window of the car and saw that it was him, and she pointed out my son. There were 3 police officers that pulled my son over at his school, took him out of practice. He sat on a curb, and here's the thing: his coach, who happens to be a white coach, stood there and said, "I will not leave him. What do you guys want with him? He's not going anywhere." Come to find out, the lady was lying.
See,
she lied because the first story is she saw the man through the windows. My son's truck was tinted at the time, so you couldn't have saw him through the window. Then she described him as a typical African American, but she didn't describe. She described someone she thought. She said he had a beard. He had this. One of the criteria of going to the school is that you have to be clean shaven. So imagine what he was going through, sitting on that curve, and if he didn't have the coach he had, what would he be faced with? Does it create mental illness? Absolutely.
Yes.
Should he be seeing a psychiatrist today? Absolutely.
Yes.
Does he get therapy help for it? Yes.
Yes.
But imagine the other families that don't. And it grows that little egg in your chest that now, since you did this to me, I'm going to act the way you treated me. So now I become that person that you stopped me for in the beginning that I wasn't before you stopped me. It is tough. And I'm not saying I hate the blame game, but I just want to speak truth to truth. And I think that if we can get past a small hump in life to get truth to truth and everybody's treated fair, then fine. And I'll go out to those critics who are probably going to watch this and say, well, what about the blacks who are killing blacks? Tell me whites are not killing whites.
They are.
Tell me Asians are not killing Asians and Spanish individuals are not killing each other.
They are.
It happens all over the world. I hate hearing that. Well, you guys are killing. You guys, first of all, I ain't killing nobody.
Me either.
So don't put us in a lump sum when you're talking about that. But here's the catch, though. How about you tell Fox 45 and all the news channels to start focusing on them? I bet you'll see a bigger picture. You'll see more unity because you can't just talk about one race. You're only afraid of me because of what you heard, not because of who I am. And that's what our kids go through.
Okay, everyone. Closing statements, please.
Okay, my closing statement. I guess I'll go next and I'll be done. I just enjoyed everything that was said. I'm just going to piggyback to some degree off of what Dr. John Bryce just said. You said, where is NAACP with the ads? I'm going to say this to you right now, John Bryce, Dion Smith, Dr. Nancy Watson, Xavier. I'm going to tell you, like I tell everyone, friends, family, students, you are the advertisement. You cannot wait. We are not in a position to wait for anyone to come rescue us, which is not happening. No one is coming to rescue us. No one is coming to rescue Valerie. Valerie has to make sure that in her community, she is having an impact. When I go in that classroom, I have to make sure that at the end of 15 weeks, those students do not leave the same way they came in. They're going to get what they paid for and some more. So I cannot rely on the NAACP. I cannot rely on the first Black president. I cannot rely on the first Black Supreme Court justice. I can't rely on them. The only reliance I have is God. And I have to walk according to what God is telling me to do. And I have to somehow impact my community to the degree that I can have change. Because me, John, listen, it's not a Democrat, it's not a Republican, it's not an independent. None of them are doing what we desire. So we better step up and do what we should be doing. And that's what we are all doing here. And I want to say, I thank you for allowing me to share this platform with you. I close with that.
Amen. Dr. Nancy.
Well, this is great. This is great. I had a wonderful discussion. As a pastor of a church, what I can say, mental illness, mental disorders are real. It affects every community at large. And I will piggyback from you, Dr. Val. Yes, I believe in educating. I believe in making everyone aware. It is our responsibility, even as a pastor in my church, having discussions, having platforms, community events within the community, letting those know about mental illness and how to recover or bounce back, per se, from COVID, from any traumatic event in their life, from grief, some of the things that we talked about, anxiety, depression, as well as, of course, religiously, prayer, implementing prayer into it as well. But I do firmly believe, even though prayer is a base, we also must have education, therapy as well. So I'd just like to end with that. It's all of our responsibility. It's not catered to one person. It's all of our responsibility. So as leaders, as we are here now, we're doing a great thing by having this platform. We are to share about mental illness and mental disorder. So I'll just end with that. So thank you for this opportunity, Zay.
You're welcome.
Journey, I appreciate it. And it's great seeing you all again. All right. Peace and blessings. Thank you.
Being that I know Dr. John is going to be longer. Dion, go ahead, and then I'll have.
Well, I just want to come.
I'm taking bets.
I just want to say thank you again, Xavier, for not giving up on your vision for this and for having us all together. I always enjoy being with you guys. And from the clinician standpoint, I want to tell anybody who's listening to thine own self be true. If you know that you are not navigating through your emotional or your mental health, if you're not navigating through those things in a healthy way, do not be afraid to get the help. They have crisis hotlines for suicide. I don't want to see another person lost by suicide. Please understand and know yourself. If you know that you're not functioning like how you used to, don't be afraid to get the treatment. Go to seek help. If you're a Christian and you want a Christian therapist, if you're a Buddhist, they have something tailored made for everyone. My go-to is to recommend Psychology Today, www.psychologytoday. That website will give you a myriad of mental health therapists in your area. All you have to do is put in your zip code. If you would like for me to help you, www.madewholecounseling.com. I am here for you. And lastly, I will close to say, therapy is amazing. Getting with the right therapist is like finding a good boyfriend or a good girlfriend. Sometimes the first two might not be the one, but don't give up on your therapeutic journey because you're worth it. And lastly, We have a spirit within us that therapy or nothing else can touch. So while you're on your healing journey, please note that there is a power within you that has to connect to your spirituality. Your spiritual health is just as important as your emotional and your mental wellness. So get connected back to your spiritual health. I love you. I'm Dr. Dion Smith, and I'm here for you when you need me.
And one more last thing before you can also give out your names where they can find you. We did it the last time. Leon suggested, so after John speak, you can give your where people can reach you or by email or even on Facebook or Instagram. Go ahead, Brother John.
First, I'm going to say thank you. I'm
You're
going to start
welcome.
with thank you. I think if you start with appreciation first, I think that's the most important thing. This is a beautiful platform shared with not just beautiful individuals but beautiful minds, and I think that I believe there are no coincidences in life. There's decisions. I've said this 1,000 times, and I'm on this journey that it's leading me back to the same thing. The perfection of God Himself is just perfect. There's no added ingredients or nothing I need to do. I just need to sit there and enjoy. So with that, I'm going to say this and not sounding like an infomercial. If you or somebody you know is suffering with mental illness, before you go ask someone who's already dealing with mental illness themselves, do some research. Find out what's going to be appropriate for yourself. That means if you're using Google for different aspects, use that. If you're using Yahoo, use it. Find out what your signs and symptoms are first, then get treated. Because if you ask a broken person something about you, you may end up being more broken than you were at the beginning. And I say it is not a weak thing to get help, but it's a weak thing to need help, could have got help, and don't get it. You have to go get help. This is not a black thing, a white thing. This is not a race thing at all. This is a human thing. Yes. And so for us as humans to be able to spare the lives of humans and not have the atrocities like we just had in Buffalo and other areas, let's get help. Let's see the signs of help and then figure out how to get that help to each other. Mm-hmm. I truly believe that this platform will help somebody. And if it just helps one person, then I think we did what we're supposed to do. And it helped me. So right. I want to thank you. You can reach me, of course. I'm at UPINGCOMING at Yahoo and Gmail. I am on Twitter. I'm on, I don't know my handles on Twitter, but just pull up John Bryce. You'll find me. I guarantee you that. So blessings to every single person in here. You guys are absolutely phenomenal, amazing. And like I said, I'm so encouraged just by talking to you guys. Xavier, thank you for making me a part of your journey.
Welcome.
I appreciate you more than you know.
Well, thanks, Dr. Nancy. She was the one that helped me bring you and Dion on. So I'm just grateful for that because we've been sister and brother forever.
Forever.
Amen. Thank you.
Valerie, you can give your handle and Dion and Nancy.
I'm like John. I know I'm on Instagram. Let me give you my email address. You can reach me at, let me give you expert_professor at hotmail.com. Expert_professor at hotmail.com. I am going to be putting together a series of workshops coming up anyway. And I like to reach out to the youth, and I'm getting some things together for you. So send me an email if you want to chat. Okay. Thank you.
Dion.
Okay, I can be reached on Facebook at Dion Cross Smith. That's DIONNECROZ-Smith. On Instagram at motivate_me_D. Like I said, I do have a website. If you don't want me to be your therapist, but you want me to help you to find one, you can reach out to me. Everything that you need to know, it's at www.madewholecounseling.com. Or you can just send me an email, motivates@gmail.com. I look forward to hearing from you guys.
Pastor Nancy.
I can be reached at nancywatsonministries.org. I'm on Facebook, Nancy Watson Ministries, Instagram, and also on YouTube. So where I'll share inspirational thoughts. You can reach me for prayer. connect with me on nancywatsonministries.com. There's a contact information. You will send your email through that as well. And I'll be so happy to hear from you, or if not, just to pray with you. Share share whatever you need, and knowing that I will go before the Lord for you during this time. So thank you so much, Zay.
You're welcome. Well, in the future, sometime in maybe August, I'm going to be doing something with a licensed practitioner. We want to have this would be a private session where I want to have men or women that have been molested, and they're strong in their might where they can talk about it, and in a private session with a licensed practitioner. So everyone, you can email me at xaviersjourney@gmail.com. Give us a little bio about you, a little story about what has happened, and you're at the place where you can talk about it. And so it's xaviersjourny@gmail.com. Just leave us a little story. The licensed practitioner and myself will be checking the emails, so you can tell us about your victory being molested, and it will be a private session, all male and all female in 2 different sessions. So if anyone is interested, just email me, and we're Xavier's journey is going on a journey. We're taking people. I'm a product of molestation also, and God has healed me to share. So that's why I would like to have a private session with some men, some women, and we can tell the victory, share the victory, I should say. Everyone, thank you for being on Xavier's journey and talking about mental illness and mental disorder. I thank you so much, everyone, for being a part and bringing this together, because without you, I couldn't have done it. So I thank you, everyone, again. Dr. Valerie, Dr. Dion, Dr. Watson, and Dr. John Bryce. Thank you all. And I appreciate, oh God, y'all, I appreciate y'all so much. Until next time, everyone. Subscribe on YouTube, Xavier's Journey, and you'll see what's coming on for the next month. We have some new topics that I'm gonna bring the panel back together again for some hot topics.
Hot topics.
Ready when you are.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care.
Good night.
Good night.
Bye bye.